I wanted to start out with a question about one of the most important functions that your office handles, and that is the handling and management of general obligation debt on behalf of the Commonwealth. And as many people may know, general obligation debt is a very important topic because it even holds a special place in our state constitution as far as one of those things that if all else goes wherever, we are responsible for paying those obligations. And so your office is an issuing official, as you are an issuing official for our general obligation debt, correct?
Sure. Thank you, Representative. And briefly, I'm joined by Chris Craig, who's our General Counsel, and Keith Welks, who's Deputy Treasurer for Fiscal Operations. GO debt requires the sign-off of either the Auditor General or the Treasurer. We are the agency through which GO debt is paid and administered. And as you noted, the Constitution privileges it so that in all cases it can be paid from first revenues in. We've also taken steps I'm awfully proud of to make the level of GO debt in the Commonwealth more prominent in our transparency portal. When it comes to the issuing of debt, we do not have a formal role beyond the sign-off, which is either the Auditor General. There's often some confusion about our budget, which carries a large line for service on GO debt. Those numbers, in our case, are derived from simply working through a coupon book. The more authoritative numbers, though, will always come from the Budget Office, which knows what it may or may not be planning in terms of additional issuances for the year. But happy to answer further questions about it briefly. That's our role. In the case of short-term debt, which we blessedly not needed much of in this recent fiscal year, the sign-off of both the Treasurer and the Auditor General are required for the issuance of something like a TANS, a tax anticipation note. We've replaced those through a mechanism I'm happy to talk about.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Treasurer. A concern that I wanted to raise is that I've been very concerned about how we as a Commonwealth have handled debt for a long time. And specifically, I think that in some regards it is a failure when we have to resort to debt. It results in a generational cost shifting. And as the father of a 2.5-year-old daughter, I think very clearly about what are we shifting off to our kids and grandkids. And one of the concerns that I have in looking through some of the materials that were provided related to some of the bonds that were issued in 2018, it's my understanding that there was a large amount of capitalized interest that was included in the first series of 2018 to the tune of over $41 million. And for those who might not know, something I had to refer to make sure I was clear, capitalized interest means we're actually putting the interest payment into the principal of that bond and pushing off for a period of years before we start paying on that, and thereby increasing the overall cost of that borrowing. So I wanted to ask if you could provide us some insight into under what authority the capitalized interest was rolled into those 2018 first series issuances, and if that would be the most cost-effective way on behalf of the taxpayers, not just today's taxpayers, but also future taxpayers to handle that sort of a debt issuance.
Sure, and I, as a new grandfather of a 7-month-old, I share your generational concern with maybe even more horizon. Look, debt is neutral. In cases where debt can be used to fundamentally change the production of revenues or decrease costs, in the case of buying a business, for example, debt can be a good thing. When debt is used in our lives, as in our government, to finance operations, debt, categorically is not a good thing. It's an indication of not the best fiscal management policies. And in general, and I would say this about the capitalized interest instance, I'd say this more broadly about anything that is a sort of a one-time borrow money to make it through the week, month, year is generally not good long-term fiscal management. In the case of the capitalized interest, that was a feature of the GO borrowing. And by the way, we have that now, as of last week, our historical GO borrowing levels can now be found on the Treasury Transparency Portal. That was a feature of that that the administration's bond counsel, which is essentially dispositive in such matters, judged was allowable, even if it's not. And I would agree with you on this. Not good practice. It ought to be something going forward that we all take a look at. And I put it in the category of if we're borrowing money for operating expenses to get through a short time period, that's an indication that this all is not well.